I'm super stoked to have my Kickstarter project for Penwondertive approved, and that means that the Kickstarter begins in 2 weeks. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be introducing the story to you all, because it's one thing to see the pictures, but to actually have some idea of what is Penwondertive all about, I'm going to share with you. So today, I'm actually going to read the prologue to you to give you a taste of the series, because Pendwondertive is book 1 in a series of 5 books. The series is called The Predictably Unpredictable Tales from the Land of Ardithian. Pendwondertive kicks off the entire story. It's kind of like the price of admission for the bigger picture. But it begins with a character called Phrinikky the Fox reading or narrating the prologue to introduce you to the story at large. He is a character that begins the story but will play a very significant role as the series evolves, especially into book 3 with the character, the protagonist, Minterton. This story, Pendwondertive, is about a young boy who finds himself struggling with identity, why he was sent to a boarding school, and how his mom could have done that and then just left him there, basically. He's thrown into a very challenging situation and is being held captive in his lighthouse, where he lives with his grandfather, with a very unusual little girl. And they find themselves in a precarious situation and turn to their creativity and imagination as a way to cope. And it eventually evolves into this whole tale of another world, a hidden world within a world called the Land of Ardithian, and their role to play in all of that. But first, the prologue has to introduce the series to the reader before it can introduce book 1. So let me read to you the prologue for Pendwondertive. Chairs are not so unusual for the most part, for we have them and make them and use them for all sorts of reasons in useful and practical ways. But there is a place in between dreams and wishes, between the folds of what is seen and unseen, where a most extraordinary chair sits, and that chair belongs to me, Phrinikky the Fox. Now, you might just ask, what could be so extraordinary about a chair, especially one that looks quite ordinary in the middle of an average-looking forest? And that would be a rather predictable thing to consider. But as you do, just remember, average-looking as this forest is, looks can be deceiving. What appears usual can be quite unusual in the very best of ways, chairs included. If you have ever walked in the woods, you most likely saw trees, tall and massive ones, low and wide ones, and some that were scraggly and others most grand. Critters of all kinds greeted you, whether you realized you had a welcoming committee or not, and if you weren't careful, you could easily mistake the woods for being rather ordinary, at least as trees and animals go. But in the Land of Ardithian, which now exists just beyond the edge of everything you know, forests, especially my forests, are one of the most remarkable places that ever was, but it almost never was. Ages and memories ago, the world was imperfectly beautiful, yet quite predictable. Humans and animals coexisted, nature was respected, and most folks looked out for one another and wanted nothing more than to live in peace and harmony. What they wanted and what came to be were two entirely different things, and to this day I shake my head at how utterly broken it all became. Power and control between imbecilic humans became sought after, and some forgot that loving their fellow man was more important than loving their own success. Ultimately, a terrible event happened that changed history forever. Millions of people died, animals were lost, and nature was dealt a horrible blow, especially in the realm of forests. Hope for a bright future for all was bleak and distant. Energy that flowed through the world grew dim until one unexpected sunrise when things began to change. The mighty Ardithian, which was the source of all energy that moved through the world, became sentient and realized that a second chance needed to be offered if there was any hope for the living to survive. Hope turned out to be our saving grace. Scholars were gathered. The Pendwondertive books were created, which held the wisdom and knowledge of beautiful world building, and the Ardithian attached rare and novel energy spheres to each book, giving them the power over matter and energy. Collectively, their energy ignited the Land of Ardithian. It was formed as a hidden world within the world. Years went by, lightways between our world and the broken one were created, and friendships grew between our kind and all kinds. Creativity and imaginations soared. Nature thrived once again, and forests became a haven for tree folk and fine folk. The energy, along with the hearts of those who lived in this hidden land, showed the Ardithian that the second chance was worthwhile. That is, until one particularly broken elder and his family decided they wanted to not simply control the lightways, but the forests and all living things. Chaos surrounded them. Many Ardithians were harmed. The Asciuses seemed to remain one step ahead of the powers that be, until 3 young siblings and one extraordinary friend fell into the tale most unexpectedly. Arlen was found asleep in my chair. Not a chair at the market or a chair at church, but my chair in the middle of my not common at all forest. This small detail was almost overlooked, but looks turned out to be deceiving, and she in my chair proved to be exactly the hope the Land of Ardithian needed, whether she knew it or not. At first, the children didn't quite know who they were or how they belonged to one another, or most importantly, how they could be of any help at all, as they were only children. What they found over time was that being together, regardless of what the world believed was best for them, was everything. And this gave them enough courage to face anything, including becoming heroes. So, as you sit in your comfortable chair, the children challenge you with a hard decision: to believe in only what you see, which is quite understandable, or choose to believe in a far greater world that exists just beyond the edge of everything you know. And if you ask me, I choose the world beyond the edge of everything, because that is where the imaginary is most spectacular, and the view from my chair quite extraordinary. So that introduces you to this series. This week I'm going to be going live and reading chapter 1 to you, probably tomorrow. Look for it in my feed. It's just going to be a pop-up, and it will be recorded, and then I'll share about it being recorded. But I cannot wait for many of y'all to pull up a chair. If you love children's fantasies, but you also believe that we are all meant for greater things, this book was kind of written for you. Yes, it is a children's book for kind of middle grades, 9, 10, and up. But it's also written for the adult with an inner child inside themselves that absolutely loves a children's fantasy, and the belief that even though they grew up believing and doubting themselves, they're actually very much meant for greater things. We all are. I'm excited about this project. It's been huge, and I appreciate it if you pulled up a chair and listened this far, and I look forward to introducing you to more of the books and the characters. They're a sweet one.